A message from my brother Marcus flashed across my screen at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday. The numbers were burned into my retinas. Easter brunch is family only. Don't come. My new boss, Richard Chin, will be there with his wife. Your retail job would be a disgrace, frankly. Mom agrees. We're trying to make a good impression. I dropped the phone onto the glass desk. My corner office on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower was plunged into a hollow, cold silence. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city at night stretched out, a blinding, unfeeling sea of lights, the cold circuit board of someone else's success. On the desk, carefully placed by my executive assistant, lay the Wall Street Journal, that very same issue. My own face staring back at me from page 3 with an unflappable confidence I didn't feel now. The headline read, "A Quiet Text Storm, How Maya Torres Built CloudSync into a $340 million Enterprise." My vision darkened. Something sharp and piercing clenched in my chest, a lump of resentment and stinging irony. I picked up the phone. My fingers, accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, trembled. I answered Marcus with one word. Okay. He didn't know. None of them knew. For 3 long years, I'd let this lie take root, watching it coalesce with their condescension, their pitiful looks, their rapid social ascent from which they themselves had excluded me. What would you do if your family stood on the brink of monstrous public humiliation in the presence of a man who could ruin their careers? Leave your comments below. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. Because Richard Chin wasn't just Marcus's boss. He was my VP of Strategic Partnerships, and on Monday at 9 a.m., he had the quarterly board meeting at my company, at the table where I sat. I forwarded my brother's message to my lawyer. Documentation, just in case. Let it be a cold, digital act of self-defense. Then I forced myself to return to the laptop screen, to the colorful graphs of the first quarter forecasts. The numbers danced, but I didn't see them. Something else was before my eyes. Growing up as the youngest of the Torres family, it meant living in a shadow cast from Marcus's achievements. He was our Apollo, the golden child, team captain, club president, Stanford. Jennifer was our Aphrodite, a flawless social star, married to a cardiologist, 2 children in perfect school uniforms. And I was that unexpected late child, the practical Mia. Mom pronounced the word as if it were synonymous with gray, limited. Not everyone is destined to succeed in the corporate world, dear. And I believed them. For a while. Tech hub electronics at 19. For the family, it was a death knell for my future. Shame. A personal failure. Jennifer whispered about a good husband. Marcus condescendingly offered me a secretary's position. Entry level, of course, but better than retail. They didn't see Gerald Park. They didn't see how this gray-haired engineer from Silicon Valley, pretending to be retired, spent hours after the store closed, deconstructing system architecture, cloud kernels, and the dry magic of coding with me in the back room. "You have the mindset for this, Maya," he said once, watching me untangle a tangle of system glitches. "Have you ever considered building something yourself?" I thought. Every night. My $15,000, saved up in pennies from that shameful job, smelled of sweat and skim coffee from the food court. The first CloudSync prototype was born in his basement, which smelled of soldering iron and old books. His $15,000 for 20% of the company. "I'm betting on you, not the idea," he snapped. And I returned to family dinners where Marcus bragged about his bonuses and Jennifer about the leather interior of the new Lexus. "How's work, Mia?" "Still there, at Tech Hub." Their nods were like pats on the head. Mom quickly changed the subject, as if my life were too boring, too miserable to talk about. But my life was a wild, frantic ride. At 24, my first Fortune 500 clients. At 26, $12 million in investments. At 28, a takeover and a painful buyout because they'd screwed everything up. At 31, a valuation of $340 million, 240 employees, offices in 4 cities, and still the same lie. Why? Because that one attempt, when I mentioned a startup, ended with Marcus choking on his wine from laughter. "Maya, you're selling phones in a mall," he breathed, wiping away tears. "This isn't Silicon Valley." And something in me broke and hardened at the same time. I decided to watch, silently, until the end. I let them think they were right. Jennifer, patting my hand over a cup of Mom's coffee, said it with deadly tenderness. "Honey, these internet businesses are usually scams. You're better off sticking to a steady income in retail." Without looking at me, my father concluded, "Focus on what you're good at. Not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur." Something inside me snapped and fell silent forever. I stopped trying to prove myself. I let them live in their fantasy world, where I was a gray mouse, a family misunderstanding, while in reality I was building an empire the scale of which they couldn't comprehend. The only light was Abuela Rosa. My grandmother, tiny and fierce in a purple dress, squeezed my hand at the celebration after raising $45 million. "They're tiny," she whispered in Spanish. "They're tiny, and they're small." Let them think you're small, and then show them your true size when it matters. I gave her my word, and I kept it. I remained invisible. Until the day Richard Chin accepted my offer to be vice president. I lured him away for $500,000 a year, a package deal, and stock options that would make him a millionaire. During the interview, he beamed and mentioned his wife Sarah's Easter brunch, a big family tradition she loves hosting. "Sounds wonderful," I replied indifferently. How could I have known that some colleagues were my own brother? Marcus had joined Stratford Consulting 2 months ago. When, over Christmas dinner, he pompously began talking about his new boss, tech titan Richard Chin, I merely smiled and reached for the fries. "You wouldn't understand corporate dynamics," he said dismissively. "It's complicated." "I'm sure," I agreed. "Marcus is being groomed for partner," Jennifer interjected. "Unlike some, he's serious about his career." My father raised his glass. "To our son, of whom we are proud." I left, citing the morning shift. In the car, I sank into another reality. 23 emails about the board of directors, a message from Richard, numbers from the CFO, 47% growth. I went to my penthouse, which they would never see, and worked until 2 a.m. That was 3 months ago. And now, with Marcus's message in my head, I finally understood. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was just tired. Tired of being small. Tired of this role. Building CloudSync from a prototype in the basement wasn't a stroke of luck. It was 7 years of hard labor. While they slept, thinking I was lugging boxes around the store, I was negotiating with venture capitalists, finding bugs in code, and cramming contract law at 3 a.m. Gerald was my anchor. His basement was our first fortress. 3 desks, 6 laptops, and a chalkboard covering the entire wall. The first major breakthrough came after my cold call to Redmond Financial. I showed up to the meeting with a vulnerability analysis that made their CTO pale. "How did you find that flaw?" he whispered. "I predicted it," I replied. The contract for $340,000 was signed that same day. I was 23. By the following Thanksgiving, when Marcus was bragging about an $85,000 salary, my company had already earned its first million. Everything was growing. Clients, responsibility, the stakes. The real turning point came when Patricia Ocaño, a former NSA cryptographer, joined us. "Your encryption is good," she said during the interview, "but I'll make it bulletproof." And she did. 6 months later, we received government-level certifications and won 8 government contracts. Even Jennifer's husband's clinic switched to CloudSync. She never connected the dots. The funding rounds followed one after another. Series A, B, C. 12, 45, 120 million. Each time the valuation soared. Each deal diluted my stake, but I structured everything to maintain 51% of the voting power. No one could unseat me. No one could reverse my decision. I looked at my reflection in the picture window. 30 years and 173 million on paper. For my anniversary, my family took me to Olive Garden. "We know with your job money is tight," my mother said, snatching the check from me. "Let me." I dutifully thanked her. That same morning, I closed a deal for $28 million. And 3 weeks ago, that very profile came out. Amanda Choi had dug the whole story out of me: the basement, the early failures, the breakthrough security algorithms. Maya Torres doesn't just compete, she redefines the market. There was a photo of me in my office with this city behind me, the owner of everything they didn't want to see. They never mentioned this article. Why? They don't read the business section. Their daughter works in retail. Richard Chin joined us 6 months ago, after 3 months of courting me. His network was invaluable. "You're building something special," he said at our last meeting. "I want to be a part of it." I set him a goal: double his Fortune 100 contracts in 2 years. "In 18 months, he retorted with a grin. We shook hands. His wife, Sarah, the director of a prestigious nonprofit foundation, was the perfect complement. When he casually mentioned her Easter brunch, I just nodded. Sounds like a wonderful tradition. I never imagined my brother would find himself at the epicenter of this little family spectacle. On Easter morning, I stayed home. I practiced, answered emails, and reviewed Richard's slides for the Tuesday meeting. The silence lasted until 10 to 2. Then the photos arrived. Jennifer, the perfect table, the china, the smiles. A wonderful gathering, just for family. One person missing who won't fit in anyway. Marcus, he and Richard in expensive suits, glasses in hand. I learned so much from real top managers. Some people just have what it takes. Mom, a whole flock of them around a beaming Sarah Chin. Such successful people. Too bad not all our children make us so proud. I saved every image, documentation, family. At 3:15 p.m., a video arrived. I almost deleted it, but my finger trembled. In the recording, Richard, lounging in a chair, spoke passionately about CloudSync, about my company, explaining to my family our innovations, our AI, our impending dominance. The CEO is brilliant, he said with genuine admiration. Young, strategic. She's a game changer. Do you work with her directly? My father asked respectfully. Constantly. She's exceptional. She, Jennifer's voice became razor thin, is the CEO a woman? Maya Torres, 31 years old, built everything from scratch. There was a dead silence. Then Marcus's voice, strained and condescending. She must have had family support. Surely there was family money. I replayed that moment 3 times. The bitter, perfect irony burned my throat. At 6:30 p.m., the final message from Marcus arrived. Richard says CloudSync is hiring. Of course, it's too complicated for you, but I thought I'd mention it. You never know. I might get tired of retail. I sat in the living room of my penthouse, the one with the view of the harbor at night, and looked at the lights. And I made a decision. The board meeting is Tuesday at 9 a.m. Everything will be as usual. Richard with a report, the CFO with numbers, the CTO with a roadmap, and me at the head of the table. I called my assistant. Print out the profile from Journal. Frame it. Hang this in the boardroom right behind my chair, visible from the entrance. I texted the head of security. There may be a scene Tuesday morning. Be prepared. The reply came instantly. Understood. And finally, to the lawyer. Letter to cease all contact based on harassment. Use all correspondence. I need options. 30 seconds later, draft ready, awaiting your command. I poured a glass of 2015 Bordeaux, which cost more than Marcus's 6 months' rent. I raised it in the silence of the empty house. See you Tuesday, brother. Monday. I entered the Meridian lobby at 6:45. The air was cool and deserted, smelling of coffee and silence. Good morning, Ms. Torres, nodded the senior security guard, James. Good morning, James. How's your daughter's college going? His face lit up. Georgia Tech accepted her. Engineering scholarship. Send me her resume. We have a summer internship right now. It was me. A person my family had never met. I had everything in my office organized with impeccable precision. Documents, reports, abstracts. Michelle, my assistant, walked in at 7:30 with coffee and a knowing look. Big day. This is going to be interesting. Richard's nervous. He's been peppering me with questions about the forecast. He'll be fine. That's why I hired him. She lingered by the door. The journal profile is already hanging in the boardroom, right behind your chair. Good, she smiled softly. You really do this. Really. At 8:15, I called Patricia Acanio, our director of security. Are you going to be at the board meeting? I wouldn't miss it for the world. There's whispers. There'll be drama. If anyone gets out of hand, I need them escorted out. You have that persuasive aura. She laughed, low, confident. I've escorted senators out of closed-door briefings, Mia. I can handle it. Patricia, whatever happens, remember, you built this. You've earned every inch of this company. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. I swallowed. I won't let you. At 8:45, I walked into the boardroom. The profile was perfect. My face, the headline, the whole truth on the wall. It was impossible not to notice. I took a seat at the head of the table. I checked my phone. Marcus had texted at 7. Another boring day at the store? And here I am presenting to real senior executives. Different worlds, Mia. Different worlds. I didn't answer. At 8:50, board members began to arrive. David Chin, no relation. Samantha, Patricia, representatives from venture capital firms. Their gazes slid over the frame behind me. Good morning, I began evenly. Let's have a productive meeting. At 8:57, Richard Chin walked in. Impeccable suit, confident smile, laptop tucked under his arm. He looked up, saw me at the head of the table, saw my profile. His face lived a whole life in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, shock, icy horror. Richard, I said pleasantly, good morning. Ready for the presentation? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Maya Torres. Right, I nodded. We should get started. The agenda is tight. He turned as white as a brick. You're Marcus's sister. Stepsister, but yes. He said, you work in retail, in some store. I allowed myself a slight smile. I did. Started there at 19. The best decision of my life. I met my first investor there. Richard sank heavily into his chair. His hands were shaking. Richard's presentation was excruciating. His polish crumbled, his speech stumbled, his gaze constantly darted in my direction. The board members exchanged glances. This was not the brilliant strategist they knew. Richard, I gently interjected when he faltered for the third time, breathe. Your numbers are excellent. Partnerships exceeded forecasts by 47%. You should be proud. He nodded, swallowed hard, and somehow finished his presentation. At 10:15, they called a break. Richard approached me immediately, his face ashen. Maya, I need to explain myself. No need, I said calmly. You didn't know. Marcus never mentioned my existence in a professional context, did he? He talks about his loser sister, that your parents are ashamed of you. That sounds like him, but you, he waved his hand helplessly toward the room, the reports, the whole reality. You are it. I am it, I confirmed, for 7 years. I just haven't spent the energy to dissuade my family. Why? I weighed the answer. Because their delusions told me everything I needed to know about them. And because building this, I glanced around the room, was more important than winning arguments over dinner. Richard dropped his head into his hands. Your brother bragged this morning about how he kept you from brunch so you wouldn't embarrass him in front of me. I read it. He has no idea you could fire me right now, and him, ruin both careers with one letter. I could, I agreed, but that's not my style. What are you going to do? Richard asked, his gaze lost. I silently pulled out my phone and opened the archive folder. I scrolled through the screenshots, those poisonous messages, the photos from their perfect brunch, the video of him, Richard, speaking so enthusiastically about my brainchild in front of my blind family. I'll forward this to Marcus, and then I'll give him a choice. He can apologize. He can choose not to apologize. He can continue to look down on me. It's his decision. Richard turned even paler. He'll panic. He'll call, scream, demand why I didn't tell him. You didn't know what to say. It's not your fault. My wife, oh my God, Sarah. She was so eager to meet your family. She kept asking why you weren't here. What did you say? That you were probably busy. I assumed there was some family tension. Your intuition was spot on. At 10:25, we resumed the meeting. Everything else went like clockwork. The roadmap, the budget, the forecasts. At 11:47, I adjourned the meeting. Richard lingered after the room had cleared. Maya, I'm truly sorry. For everything. For not knowing I was part of this Easter farce. You were a guest. You did nothing. What happens now? I found my brother's number on my phone. My fingers, usually so confident, paused for a moment. Then I began typing. Each word was a cold, honed projectile. Hi, Marcus. This is Maya, the one from retail. I met your boss, Richard Chin, today at the CloudSync board meeting. You know, that company he raved about at Easter with that brilliant CEO? This is my company. I built it over 7 years, while you patronizingly advised me to find a man. I'm Richard's boss. I control the contracts your company so desperately wants to keep. You said I'd embarrass you. You were right. But the embarrassment isn't mine. We'll talk soon. I showed the screen to Richard. Too harsh? He exhaled slowly. No. This is utter devastating. I hit send. The silence lasted exactly 42 seconds. Then my phone exploded. Calls, Marcus, Jennifer, Dad, Marcus again. I declined one after another. Then the messages started pouring in. Desperate, accusatory, disbelieving. This is a joke. You're lying. Mom, what did she do to Marcus? How is this possible? You let us think you were nobody. I turned to Richard. Do you want to call him? Confirm? He looked at me as if he'd never seen me before. That seems cruel. More cruel than texting your sister that her presence would disgrace you? He dialed the number. I heard my brother's voice through the speaker, squealing, choked with panic. Richard, tell me it's a misunderstanding. Tell me Maya isn't... She's my CEO, Marcus, the founder of CloudSync, the one in the article. And you told her not to come. The silence on the line was thick as pitch. You work for my sister? I work for one of the most brilliant executives in Silicon Valley. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked. You never mentioned her name. You talked about your failure sister. I couldn't have known. Then a quiet, crushed voice. I need to fix this. This is between you two. Richard hung up. His gaze was heavy. You are enjoying this. I'm not enjoying this. I'm ending this. There's a difference. The phone rang again. Marcus. I answered on speakerphone. Maya, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You were protecting your reputation. I respect that. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. 7 years, not a single real question about my life. You thought I was nobody, and you were wrong. A pause. Then his voice, full of animal fear. And my job? Richard, contracts. Your job is safe. Richard's is too. I don't destroy careers over personal matters. That's not how I run a company. The relief that poured through the phone was almost physical. Thank you, I interrupted him. But our personal lives are different. We're not family, Marcus. We're just people connected by DNA, and that's it. But Marcus, we're done personally. My voice was as level as a blade. No more dinners where I'm a disappointment. No more disdainful messages. No more exclusions because I don't live up to your standards. We're professional contacts now, and nothing more. Maya, you're my sister, his voice broke. I'm the sister you told me not to embarrass you on Easter, which you neglected all these years while I built an empire. I'm tired of being small, Marcus. Tired of shrinking to make you comfortable. The silence on the line grew thick, suffocating. Then a quiet, crushed exhalation. I'm sorry. I know you're sorry, but regret doesn't erase the years you treated me like nothing. I paused, letting the words sink in. I have to go. Boards of directors don't fool themselves. I hung up. Richard looked at me, his face a mask of amazement. That was the most discreet breakup I've ever seen. I learned from the best. You should watch how I negotiate with hostile investors. He laughed, briefly, nervously, but sincerely. Maya Torres, my boss, the retail girl. That's how it will go down in my history. And you're not to blame for anything. Remember that. What about your parents? Jennifer? I glanced at my phone. 47 missed calls, 63 messages. They'll understand. Or they won't. But I'm tired of explaining who I am. By evening, the consequences had washed over me. Jennifer called for the 17th time, and I finally answered. Maya, what the hell is going on? Marcus is hysterical. Mom is crying. Dad is demanding a family dinner to fix everything. Fix what exactly? I asked coldly. This situation. You're some kind of secret CEO who makes your brother look like a complete idiot. I didn't make him look like an idiot. He chose to write to me that my job is a disgrace. His choice. You let us think you were a loser. I let you think whatever you wanted. You never asked. Not one of you ever asked a real question about my life. Because you worked at Tech Hub. I do. Gerald Park is on my advisory board. I have an office there. I just don't work retail at Tech Hub. Not for 7 years. That's a scam. Really? Or is this strategic privacy from my family that has made me feel worthless for 10 years? Jennifer trailed off. We never wanted. You advised me to find a good man, Jen. Mom forgot my birthday. Marcus called me a disappointment to my face. Dad drank a toast to a son we're proud of while I sat next to him. That's not motivation. That's brushing it off. There's a difference. She hung up. Mom texted at 8:47 p.m. Family dinner on Sunday. You're coming. We need to discuss it. I'm unavailable, I replied. Maya, this isn't a request. I'm 31. I run a $340 million company. I don't follow orders anymore. How dare you talk to me like that? How dare you treat me like a disgrace to the family for 10 years while I was changing an entire industry? She didn't answer. Dad tried a different approach, a businesslike, measured call on Wednesday morning. Maya, I've thought it over. Perhaps we were too harsh in our judgments about your career path. You've obviously achieved a lot. We'd like to reconnect, to properly recognize your successes. Why now, Dad? I asked without emotion. Because you're our daughter. Family is important. Was family important when you forgot my birthday? When you kicked me out of Easter? When Marcus said I'd embarrass him in front of the boss? Where was the importance of family then? We were wrong. You made a choice, a conscious choice to belittle, to exclude, to consider me inferior. What do you want from us now? I looked out the window at the city that was now mine. Nothing. I stopped waiting for your approval when I signed my first $1 million contract. I stopped needing your recognition when I made the Forbes list. It's over. Maya, we can be polite at rare events, keep our distance, but we won't go back to the way it was, because the way it was almost killed everything alive in me. I hung up before he could say more. 3 months passed. CloudSync's second quarter numbers soared 62%, and we signed 8 new contracts with Fortune 500 giants. Richard's department became the company's driving force. We didn't discuss Marcus again, but his wife Sarah sent me a handwritten note on thick cream-colored paper. Maya, Richard told me everything. I'm horrified by the way your family treated you, and even more thrilled by what you've built. If you ever want to come to a real brunch where people respect each other, your place will always be waiting. Sarah. I framed the note and hung it next to the journal article. 2 pieces of evidence, one for the world, one for the heart. At the end of June, a letter arrived from Marcus. Long, deliberate. I was wrong, and not just about Easter. I've looked down on you my whole life, thinking success was just my ladder. I didn't see that you were building your own, which turned out to be higher. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm proud of you, and I'm ashamed it took public humiliation for you to see that. I read it 3 times, forwarded it to the therapist. Your opinion? She answered with a question. What's yours? I thought about Abuela Rosa, about her wisdom in being small until the time came to show off her size, about Gerald, who saw the spark in a 19-year-old salesgirl, about the 240 employees whose lives are tied to my choice. And I answered Marcus, honestly, harshly. I believe your sincerity, but years aren't erased by one letter. If you're serious, start with therapy. Figure out why you felt the need to belittle me. Work through it. If in a year or two you've completed this process, we can have coffee. In the meantime, be good at your job. And remember, the person you neglect today could be your boss tomorrow. He didn't answer right away. Good in such a situation meant he was thinking. Exactly 1 year later, on the anniversary of that Easter message, I hosted my brunch. Gathered in my penthouse were those who believed in me before it was obvious. Gerald, Patricia, Richard and Sarah, Michelle, the early investors. 20 people who saw potential in someone with an idea and determination. We raised glasses under a panoramic view of the harbor. CloudSync's valuation had just surpassed $500 million. To those who believed, I said. To those who built, Gerald added. To Maya, Patricia proclaimed. She proved that the best revenge is not to destroy, but to build your life. We laughed, celebrating not just success, but the entire journey that gave it meaning. The phone vibrated softly. Message from Marcus. Scheduled an appointment with a therapist. It's harder than I thought. Thanks for the push. I smiled and typed back, proud of your step. Maybe one day we'll have that coffee. Maybe something will be put back together from the broken pieces. But on this day, in this light, among these people, I had everything I needed. I found not just success, but the freedom to be myself, without apologies, without looking back, and most importantly, without them.